No one will be friends to the African until the African becomes friends with herself. No one will respect the African until she respects herself. No one will invest in the African until she invests in herself. I have a question for you, Africa. Are you ready for change? That you have to do this for yourself. I have some good news for you. If there was a plan that could launch Africa into a rapid economic plan that can make Africa the front runner in 50 years in the world stage, if that plan would end Western dominance and Chinese imperialism, and that plan that could create a new capital system and will put resources into the hands of entrepreneurs and businesses, and a plan that will increase the quality of life of every African, man, woman, and child by providing industry, education, food sustainability, housing, medical facilities, while maintaining African identity and culture and uniqueness and heritage. Would you support that kind of plan? Well, I have good news for you, fellow Africans. Such a plan has been developed and is about to hit the ground running. It's called the Rapid Africa Plan, and it's based on the book by Professor Hannington Mobiwa. We need every African, both on the continent and abroad, to join the movement. Africa, let's move.
Yeah, greetings and welcome to another one of our PSCM module session. This week I am glad to have with us Brother Sabelo from Azania, and we'll hopefully be having also a brother from Tanzania. We'll be popping in later. Plus we'll be having our resident Elder Pepukayi with us. But as usual, before we go into the main body of the meeting, we will always start by calling upon Ndugwe Mani, who's going to change the vibrations for us.
Okay. Asante sana, Ndugu. Asante sana. And greetings. And greetings to all the family watching. So I was saying Kiswahili, Hamjambo, Jamal, which basically means greetings, kindred, greetings, family. So my name is Ndugwe Mani. I'm a member of the Pan African Congress movement and an African spiritual life coach. And so we're now going to start on a ritual in where we're going to invocate our inner power by calling on the all, the creator, the ancestors, and all the essential powers, netters, natural forces that underpin all things as aspects of the creator that are within us and outside of us, to strengthen us, to bring us into peace, and to take forward our objectives and to assist us in manifesting those objectives. And so I will get onto that in a second, but in order to get us into the right framework and right mindset, we're going to breathe. And so I will take it that Mzee Pepukayi, who's in the background, gives me the permission to start. And any elders who are watching, please may I have your permission to start. So what we're going to do is going to breathe together. Very important about our breath, because our breath is a link between our spiritual and our physical entities. It's life, but it also moves us away from where our enemies wish us to be, which is to be emotional, animalistic, and reactive, instead of calm, calling on our power and using our higher intellect and our intelligence to see the way forward and plan forward and take action. So in order to do that, we're going to breathe together, and that'll make us calmer. So what we're going to do, and if you wish to take part, please do. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. Just watch. There's going to be, when I speak in Kiswahili and in some Kemetic terms, all the translations are in English, so that this is a ritual in our African tradition, but it's also a point for us to teach and learn and to share this, so that we become more comfortable in being ourselves. But if you don't want to take part, that's absolutely fine. But also remember that our words have power, our intentions have power. And so if you don't mean what you're going to say, then it's better you don't say it. You will manifest your own destiny, and your higher self is watching. So if you wish to take part, please do. So we're going to breathe. So if you're going to do that, we sit straight in whichever chair we're sitting, so that our spine is straight, so our 7 energy centers, or as the Hindu Kush call them, chakra, are in line. To do that, we sit straight in whichever chair we're sitting. So somebody might be watching it as well, so then we need to watch out for feedback. But as I continue, sit straight, hands on our thighs, and we're going to breathe. We're going to breathe. Spirit tells me 4 times. 4, because that's a spiritual number or a quantity for abundance, for health, for stability, for a table has 4 legs, a room has 4 walls. It's about strength. It's about strength, but it's also about abundance. So we're going to breathe, and then we're going to breathe out. In order to breathe out, we're going to use our full lung capacity. So we're going to pull our stomachs in, and that forces the air out of our mouth. And then we're going to relax the stomach, and then the air comes in through our nose. And that is 1. And I'll count in Kiswahili. Okay. So we begin. We breathe out. And relax stomach and breathe into the nose. Feel that cleansing breath come into your lungs. Now breathe out. Pull the stomach in. Relax. And breathe in. Mbili. 2. And breathe out. Relax. And breathe in. Tatu. And now breathe out. Relax and breathe in. Inner. So now we're already starting to feel calmer, more present, forgetting about where we're going and what we're going to do, but focusing on the job at hand. So I'm going to share my screen. And Ndugu, if you can allow everybody to see this.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, beautiful. Asante sana. Asante sana in Kiswahili means thank you very much. And Ndugu means brother, Dada means sister, and Mzee means elder. So, mabadiliko ya nishati means change of energy in Kiswahili. So to change the energy or vibration, we now thank the powers to ask that we have a closer connection with them and that they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And in order to do that is that we're going to share our energy with them through vibration. That's going to be our offering. That's going to be our tambiko, or our libation. We're going to use our energy. In order to do that, I'm going to use the chime from this triangle. And triangle is a very spiritual and powerful object and shape. The Trinity, so represented here. So I'm going to ring the chime, and I'm going to ring it 3 times. 3 for the spiritual number of coming into birth, creation, and balance. So I'm going to ring it 3 times, allow the vibration to go over you, around you, and through you. Bring you into oneness with the setting that you are in now, the place where you're in now. Bring you into that resonance of oneness, so that the outer becomes the inner becomes the outer, opening up your third eye, your consciousness, to the overall universal consciousness, which is all of us, as we are aspects of that consciousness, and thereby we connect with each other wherever we are in the world. So now I'm going to ring the chime. So continue to breathe deeply. Keep your eyes closed or open. It's up to you. And I'll begin, and I'll count. Moja. Mbili. Feel the vibration. Tatu. As we share that our vibration, and the tongues represent the one vibration that is all things, including us, we continue with the invocation, the ritual. So I'll speak, and then we'll say it all together, a very special and powerful affirmation. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. We are one, or we are the same thing. A very powerful thing that we're calling upon, and our understanding. So I'll begin. Ninaomba ya maomba awote. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Beautiful. Ninaomba ya nebacha. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Now on to one of the Lawa of the Vudun tradition. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya mamiwata. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Now on to the netters, the spiritual nature of us, the forces of nature, aspects of the creator that underpin all things within us and outside of us. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya shu. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya tefnut. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. These are from the Kemetic tradition, but we also give respect to all other African spiritual traditions, because there's a golden thread from all of them. They all talk about the same thing, just in different languages and in different ways. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya nut. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. And we go on to the Paut Neteru, the Kemetic tree of life. These is a spiritual science that is here to improve the human being, so that we become one with our true essence, and thereby bring the universe and all creation into balance. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya geb. Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya auset. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya sebek. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya heteru. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya heru. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya herakuti. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya maat. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya sakar. Sisini Kitu Kimoja. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu Ya Tahuti.
Sisini
Kitu Kamoja. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu Ya Ausa. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu Ya Amen. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. And now that we've called upon the first ancestor, the All, Wote, we now call upon those ancestors in our direct bloodline, first of all, for anybody else. If they are us and we are them, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I'll begin. I'll start with my mother. Nina Omba, Mama Yangu, Audrey May Kelly. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Please.
Nina Omba, Iselin Rattigan, mother.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaamba Mababu Lenora, mother.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Please, if there's anybody else in your direct bloodline you wish to call into presence, please do.
Yeah, Nina Omba, Grandma Louise Hines, and Grandfather Sylvester Rattigan.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaamba Mababu, grandfather Mbuso, grandmother Volo, brother Sandiso.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Yes. Okay. All right. So Asante Sana. So now we can go on to those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but have given their time, effort, and their very lives for our families, for our communities, for our nations, and for our race. Ninaomba Mzee, the Honorable Marcus Mazar Garvey. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Please.
Ninaomba Patrice Lumumba.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaamba Mabu Kwame Nkrumah.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Mzee Winnie Mandela. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba Thomas Sankara.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaamba Sobukwe.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaamba Malcolm X.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba Wazee Buzamazula Creda Untwa na Sabont Fusome na Max Bouvier. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Okay, and so now we can go on to those ancestors who we don't always know their names, but we should never forget them. And they're always looking for us to call upon them for their wisdom and their guidance. And we'll start with the Mangamazi. Ninaomba Mababuya Mangamazi. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. That's, for those who don't know, that's for those who fought and died in the Arab enslavement, European enslavement, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Now those who fought in the Gula Wars. Ninaomba Mababuya Gula Vita. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. Ninamba Mababuya Asian Revolution. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. For one of the great Pan-African states. Ninamba Mababuya Taifa la Mosa Nation. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. Ninamba Mababuya APLA. Now SWAPO. Now Freedom and Land Party. Now Black Panthers. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. Ninamba Mababuya Watuya Kori. Now West Papua. Now Dravidians. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. And those who don't know, the Kori is what our brothers and sisters in Australia call themselves. Ninamba Mababuya Watuya Kemet. Now Taseti. Now Kush. Now Nubia. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. Ninawaomba wanaishi ambao watatetea sisi, na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. Sisini Kitu Kumoja. And finally we end on the words of power and affirmation. And we say, just repeat after me with power and intent. Because intent means everything. There's no intent, there's no action. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Anuk, amen.
Anuk, amen.
All power to our people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end. I am, amen. Asanteni sana, Jamal. Thanks very much, family.
Okay, asante sana very much to Grimani for that. And yes, now what I like to do, the Pepukayi is not, yeah, just before we go into the actual presentation, and there's quite a bit of noise in the background somewhere.
Okay, I will come back at the end, so I...
Okay.
All right, tutanana.
Okay. Right. Yeah, hold on, there's a lot of noise. Yeah, it's coming from. Okay, so yes, today's topic, as you can see, is Pan Africanism and the Rapid Africa Plan. Now, what I like to do just before we go, because I'll be showing a short video of the architect of the Africa Rapid Plan. This video was made a few years ago, so some of the names he mentioned in terms of presidents are no longer in those positions, but he will give an overall sketch of the plan as to why he came about and to the idea behind it. So just before we do that, I do have two guests today, international guests. That's Brother Sabelo from Azania and Brother Tinno, who hails from Tanzania. So I'd just like them to introduce themselves just briefly, just to say who they are, just briefly for the ones who are looking in. So we'll start with Brother Sabelo.
Hi, greetings family. Sabelo Banda is my name. I am the founder of the School of African Awareness. I'm based in Azania.
Okay. And also Brother Tinno. Hello, Brother
Greetings,
Tinno.
Jumbo.
Yeah. Okay.
Greetings, greetings.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
My name is Tinno. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Tinno. I'm from Tanzania, based in London. I represent Tanzania ruling party in London.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just Elder Pepukayi, could I say, just introduce yourself briefly for the.
Pepukayi from the Pan African Congress movement.
Okay. Thanks. So now you have everybody, and of course, I'm Brother Taharkah, and I'm a member of the Pan African Congress movement. And this is the organization that put on these meetings, the Umojo sessions, each Sunday between 6 and 8. And as an organization, from our name, as you can see, the Pan African Congress movement, we very much take an approach in terms of our destiny. And we look at Pan Africanism as one of the way forward. Pan Africanism is an ideology that was set down for us many, many years ago. We can say Pan Africanism would have started from the day they started to kidnap Africans out of Africa, because it's the dream of the coming together of Africans and African people worldwide. And we can see over the years, it has evolved and developed. We can see some of the stalwarts of the Pan-Africanist movements over the years have been people such as the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and we can see the first Pan-African Congress, because there was a series of congresses was held over the years in order to raise the profile of the whole Pan-African concept. And the first of those events was actually took place here in London in 1900. And it was put on by a brother from Trinidad. He hailed from Trinidad and Tobago, known as Henry Sylvester Williams. And those congresses continued, and until one of the most pivotal one was held in 1945, just after the Second World War in Manchester, England. And that gave rise to many of African leaders. And at that particular Congress, that's when Africans, potential leaders, stepped forward and said to the Europeans, we want independence. We are no longer happy to be ruled by these Europeans, and we would now like our freedom. That was done at the 45 Congress. And then in 1974, the first of these congresses to be held on the continent of Africa was held in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 1974. And that was very pivotal. So as I'm now going to play a short video, it's about 12 minutes long. And like I said, it's from the architect, the brother who put together, Professor Harrington, who put together the Rapid Africa Plan. And he'll be giving his, views as to why he thought it was necessary. So I will now go into the video and play.
Continentals, fellow Pan-Africans, I'm here to introduce myself and to introduce you a new hope, a new power into the future of Africa. My name is Hannington Mubaiwa. I am the architect of the economic revolution of Africa. I am the architect of the execution plan that will drive Africa into the future. Africa to be a leading economy in 50 years. I think we have talked enough. We have complained enough. And we've been contained for long enough. There comes a time when a people must say, enough is enough. And not only that, enough is enough. And to wake up and realize that, there comes a time when a people needs an intellectual software upgrade. When a people have been contained, when a people have a culture that has been decimated, they are left to wander in the desert, as it were. And it's time for us to engage a new psychology, a new software to drive Africa, that we are free people. We can drive our own destiny, that we have everything we need to drive ourselves into the future. And by God's design, every society has got what is called a gene of emergence. In other words, we are built at creation as an African people with an inbuilt ability to advance ourselves into the future and to detach ourselves from any liability, any challenge that may exist into the future. It's a science. And we need to adopt our revolution in that instant. It is important for us to understand that the political revolution was achieved. It's time for a total revolution. It's time for an economic revolution. It's time for us to move beyond history and beyond analysis and drive ourselves. We are the freedom that we have been looking for. We are the power into the future. Africa is for Africans. And only African organic thought leadership and strategy can drive the freedom of Africa into the future. We are totally capable of designing and implementing a plan that will make Africa or position Africa in the leading continent in 50 years that God has designed it to be. And in doing so, it takes a plan. That is why, for the past 7 years, God separated me to put together a plan that I call the Rapid Africa Plan, the fast-track modernization of Africa. What we need right now is to have a bias for action. And as we speak and celebrate our history through the Africa Day, we continue to celebrate. I would like to honor the original revolutionaries, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, President Banda, President Nyerere, President Kenyatta, Herbert Chitepo, President Mandela, and Mbeki. Did I mention President Banda? And President Robert Mugabe. And I would like to also honor in this time the current budding revolutionaries of the new era of the total revolution of Africa. We acquired a quasi-political revolution which has not been polished enough. And we had remaining an economic revolution so that we can have a total revolution. We are moving beyond history into our power by achieving, by engaging a total revolution. The next decade is the decade of Africa. And the next 5 decades are the decades of the rise of Africa into its place to become a leading economy with a massive consumption of 3 billion people in 50 years. And I want to introduce to you a plan with a sense of urgency, if not emergency, for Africa has been colonized, as we all know, by China. And Africa is contained by the vestiges of neocolonialism, which we must detach ourselves from. But to do that, we need a plan, the Rapid Africa Plan, and we need an action plan. What I've done is packaged the concerns, the history of our old paradigm into a new paradigm that is driven by the philosophies of the future, by a new psychology, a mindset that will explode Africa and fast-track it through industrial revolutions so we can catch up with the fourth revolution. Behind a vision, a leading idea, and a concept of intent, for that is the science of the transformation of any nation. And to that effect, we need to understand that there are 3 phases of structuring such a revolution. Number 1, we need a re-entrepreneuring, a rethinking of the future of the value or an idea that can be conceptualized into a vision. In other words, there's a visionary space. Then there's a strategic space or a re-engineering space where we are detaching ourselves from the old and adopting the new. Then there's the institutionalization phase. And today I want to deal with the visionary stage. First of all, according to this plan, we need to place President Banda of Zambia as a patron of this revolution. And his spokesperson, President Mbeki, and their job is to guide and to give us the philosophies and the support to get us back onto the revolution of the emancipation of the African people. And we're going to concentrate on the visionary space. And under the visionary space, we need to understand and realize that we need a revitalization, a transformation of Africa. And to do that, we need a vision. And therefore, there are people already in Africa, there are leaders who have shown their desire for us to chart a new course. It is easier to work with somebody who is already on that journey. And in that light, I have proposed that President Kagame, President Akufo-Addo of Ghana, and of course first of Rwanda, President Kagame, President Masisi of Botswana, and President Magufuli be the initial team to adopt, to polish, to innovate the vision that I have designed for the total economic revolution of Africa. Africa is going to be driven by a vision that is built on a bridge supported by 3 columns. Number 1, the means. Number 2, the culture or the value system. Number 3, the strategy. Their duty is to have our vision clarified and structured, qualified, quantified, given a sense of schedule, and justified. And to ratify the strategic map, which is the vision, the means, the culture, value system, and the strategy. At this stage, so that we can hit the ground running, it is important for us to send a message to the Europeans, the Westerners in all their totality, the Asians, especially China, that Africa is entering into the second part of its revolution, the economic revolution. We're going to detach ourselves from the complexities that has impeded the transformation of Africa, and we're about to launch the new plan. We're going to kickstart the plan by designing or ratifying or clarifying our vision and creating buy-in into that vision. Then we'll enter into a re-engineering stage where we leave what doesn't work, adopt what works, and usher a new paradigm with new strategies that will make Africa a leading continent in 50 years by GDP. And that's the next decade. And the next 5 decades are the decades of Africa, as Africa explodes its middle class, as Africa explodes its population to be the leading consumption power in the world. In the next phase, very soon, we will put forward the second phase, which is the structuring of the strategy, the re-engineering, and then the institutionalization. But at this stage, let's focus on the vision and get President Mbeki to coordinate President Kagame, President Addo, President Magufuli, and President Masisi to work on our vision. Somebody says, for without a vision, a people perish. To paraphrase, we need a vision so we can have a plan. The time for Africa to have an action, a bias for action, and have a plan to drive us in the future under the proper science of transformation, as God favored us with that science. We have enough knowledge, we have enough capacity, we have enough ability, and the inbuilt power by God to drive Africa into the future. I want to thank you all as we move into the first stage of the transformation of Africa through what I call the Rapid Africa Plan, the fast-track modernization of Africa. Thank you very much. Like I said, my name is Hannington Mbaiwa. I'm the architect of the transformational modernization of Africa, the rapid modernization transformational program of Africa.
Okay, so you've all heard the small presentation by Professor, I'm trying to pronounce the name, Mwangwinwa. And in terms of he's put forward the Africa Rapid Plan. As you can see, that video I played is a few years old because obviously some of the presidents he mentioned are no longer presidents of the country, but the plan was set a few years ago, and that plan is it's now, we can say, in some stage of operation because it's been a few years, and he mentioned quite a few presidents that's still there, and it'd be interesting to look at some of those particular countries and to see if we can see any overall view of where this plan has been put into action or is coming into action. So okay, now I'd like to open up the floor. So whoever would like to come and just, make a comment on what you've heard him say. Do you agree that Africa needs a plan? And the plan that he's put forward, the Rapid Africa plan, do you agree with that? Do you think it's a plan that Africa needs? And the additional questions I would like to ask, when we look at Pan-Africanism as a whole, how does this plan fit into the whole concept of Pan-Africanism? Do we think it fits? Because, so I'll just leave it at that and open up the floor. So who would like to start off? All right. If I call upon, say, Brother Sabelo.
Thank you, my brother. I thought you were going to call upon Elder Pepukayi, then the elder can give direction.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's not a problem. To your questions, do we need a plan? Yeah, definitely we do need a plan, or maybe we need to execute on a Pan-Africanist plan. And as to whether Professor Mbayiwa's plan is the plan that Africa needs or not, at this stage, it's really difficult for me to give you a conclusive response, in the sense that the videos that I have watched where he articulates the position, including this particular one, I have some issues which I would need further clarity on. And because I've not been able to read the book, because apparently the plan is captured in his book, The Riot Act, which is about 646 pages long and needs to be purchased through Amazon. So it's not easily accessible for everyone to get a hold of and therefore be able to understand what it is. And I will elaborate further after I've laid this particular foundation, and I'll listen to what the other panelists have to say as well. But in as far as the relationship between the plan and Pan-Africanism, I personally have some issues which sound, listening to what the brother said, don't sound like an articulation of a Pan-Africanist viewpoint. And some of the people he has identified as heroes and revolutionaries, I don't understand how, for instance, you can have Mandela and Beki on the same list with Garvey and call them revolutionary heroes that we should celebrate as African people. I will elaborate more on that particular aspect as we go along, but there are some issues which I personally have from a purely Pan-Africanist perspective, and I'll only be able to comment mainly on what I have heard him say, not having read what the book contains particularly.
Okay. Elder Pepukayi?
Well, I'll be extremely brief because Brother Sabelo has really put it into perspective. I never heard of the book, never heard of the plan. The fact that Amazon is always a big convenience. What our brother should be doing is to seek out Pan-African organization globally, reach out to them, make his book available to them. We should not go line up to Amazon to get the book. And for example, one of the persons he mentioned, the current president of Ghana, he is a man that's building a massive cathedral in Ghana, a Christian cathedral. What is he doing to evolve African spiritual tradition. He's the same man who allow America to come in on set of bases. So I've been very, very skeptical on this one. I really, really would want to know where this brother is coming from. What's his background? I know nothing about him. And the little that he said hasn't said anything to me that would give me a good lead as to where it's going. So really, without seeing the plan, so we could have a very good look at it, we're really not in a position to comment much.
Brother Tinno, would you like to make a comment in terms of what you've heard? Hold on, I think you're muted. Okay.
Yeah, I watched the video, but as other panel mentioned, like through that video, if you don't read the book and understand it properly, you cannot comment much, or you cannot say much until you read and you do your own background and all. But some of the people which he mentioned, like I'm from Tanzania, then it was home of revolution during that time of the southern countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, Namibia. We saw a lot of these things. And some of the leader he mentioned, like their revolutions, you know, they did not participate much. So you need to read the book to understand why he mentioned someone who during that really revolution and all this, some of them did not participate much. And to come with those kind of concept, we need a lot of, you need to understand, you need to a broad wide, and we need to discuss with a lot of people and to come together. But for me, as my view with Pan Africa and Africa, I think Pan Africa is not really established well in some of the country, like especially like East Africa. So I think we need to establish, we need to have some members in different country in Africa, Caribbean, whatever. We need to establish Pan Africa. Like now, what we are doing, like open an NGO. We need youth and other people in some country. We need to have branches which are active, because I think a lot of jobs and a lot of effort are done from this side rather than inside Africa. For example, Pan Africa, it was in Tanzania, but it's not active now. So we need back. So we need, for me, we have to start having some active branch in different country. And but a lot, what I can see, there's a lot of effort done from outside Africa, from England and other America, Caribbean. But for my experience, especially in East Africa, it's not that active. So I think we need to establish this organization. Yeah, get some youth involved, open like what is the ideas now? Have some charities, some NGOs. So we bring it back really in Africa. That's my view on which I wanted to share with you today. But about the brother Harrington, I think I need to read the book. I need to understand it. I can comment much about that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to say in the last few years, he's been doing extensive interviews. You know, I've seen quite a few. interviews, and the last 6 months or so, the whole plan, the whole idea came up again, and it's been on quite a few stations, but mostly on the continent. So like Elder Pepukayi said, he's never heard of him, he's never seen him. Yeah, I mean, you would, yeah, not over this side of the world, but within, especially Southern Africa, that region, he's been quite active. He's been quite active. Now, in terms of, okay. All right, the title jumps out at you. When you look, you see the Rapid Africa Plan is something that catches your eye. It would have caught my eye straight away because I'm very interested in terms of, because as we know, the situation in Africa now as behold to the neo-colonial situation, what's happening, and now what's going on with the Chinese, there's definitely a need to put some kind of plan together. And I think overall, just listening to him, overall, without going into detail, he just gave a brief, you know, idea of what's needed. I mean, he mentioned 3 phases, for instance. He mentioned phase 1. Let's look at that. Need for more entrepreneurship. But sometimes in order for entrepreneurship to flourish, the climate on the ground has to be in position to allow that to happen. I think phase 2, he mentioned the strategic phase or the visionary stage, you know, phase. Again, yes, that's important. We need to have vision of where we're going. And phase 3, you mentioned the institutional stage that I think is looking at governance and so forth on the continent. So far from what we are getting is kind of vague. So let's build up on this plan. Let's look at this plan ourselves. And let's us take the title of the Rapid Africa Plan, and let's us now start to put some, you know, flesh on this frame and say, how do we see then? How do we see a plan in Africa forward? You know, how do we see that plan, the Rapid Africa Plan? He mentioned things like the Chinese in terms of trying to recolonize Africa. And he mentioned also certainly, especially the ex-European powers in Africa and the things that they're there and the things that they're still doing. So how do we see the way forward then in terms of Africa moving forward? Because I think the whole ethos behind the plan is to get Africa to, as he said, turbocharge its development, a rapid development plan. He's looking at the next, he said within 50 years, Africa should be able to become, I think you mentioned that the population is expected to be something like 3 billion. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, from the figures I've looked at, the whole economy, if you take all the Africans' economies together, we're looking at 2.5 to 3 trillion. So in the next 50 years, I think that's projected to like at least treble. So how do we see the future going forward in terms of a plan?
Okay, can I come in, Brother Taharkah? I'll take the cynic route to addressing the point that you have raised. My first point would be to say, in taking the plan forward, we need to be careful. In taking the plan forward, or dividing an African plan, we need to be careful about scenarios where individuals come and put themselves across as the God-given saviors of Africa. You hear him in the video say, God said for the past 7 years, God separated him to devise this Rapid Africa plan for the modernization of Africa. Basically, that tactic has been used so many times by people who don't want to be questioned. Because as soon as you say, God said, there's no one who will go to God and say, God, is it true? Did you say this? So we need to be very careful in the sense that for as long as we continue along the trail of pushing a particular individual and seeing that individual as the entity with the answer, then we will run into deep waters. The same situation we've experienced in the past. Gavi was very clear in laying out a foundation and a plan which was mass-based. One of the reasons why the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Gavi could be as successful as he was at the time is because UNIA was designed in such a manner that it directly empowered the ordinary African people. Whereas here we are being presented a plan which, in his words, he says will explode the middle class. That for me is anti-Pan Africanism. Once you talk about an attempt to explode the middle class, you are still talking about the exploitation of the masses of African people. You are necessarily talking about a scenario whereby you are taking the same system that is oppressing us now and believing that by using that same system, you're going to elevate the advancement of African people. But the thing is, in so doing, you are actually pushing us in a situation where you want to propel some Africans who will end up dominating other African people. The scenario, you talk about the vision. For me, I just get lost where we are dealing with a situation in Africa. Like, for instance, okay, this COVID scenario that we are faced with right now. Besides President Magufuli, which other president can you think of in Africa who has, except maybe Rajolina in Madagascar, which other president in Africa can you think of who has stood strong against what the West wants to do in their countries in as far as using people as guinea pigs for the vaccine and challenging the dominant thinking in as far as COVID is concerned? And then he, in some of his videos, will diss the African Union and say the political union is not working, we need to go for an industrial union. But the people that he says must champion the vision, the people that he says must adopt, polish, innovate, and ratify are people who are in the system. They're the same people who are already within the African Union and pushing the same policies of the African Union. If he was saying that we should look at Tanzania as an example of how we should stand strong on our culture, because look at it this way, even when it comes to medication, where this COVID thing is concerned, Tanzania is the one country that has stood strong and said, we are going to use our own medication and we are promoting our traditional healers to come up with medication that is going to heal us. You find a country like South Africa refusing to take medication that speaks to that. He's got President Mbeki as championing the vision. President Mbeki, for goodness sake, an economist who, within his own terms of presidency, failed to transform the economy for the benefit of African people within a small constituency in the form of South Africa. So how is he going to now come with a vision that transforms the entire continent? not only the entire continent, but we need to be talking about an African economy, where in talking about an African economy, we're talking about an economy that is made up of and constituted of the global African nation. An African economy cannot be confined to a scenario where he talks about Africa being like a mega business and the countries of Africa being perceived as now the substructures, as branches of this mega business. That doesn't make any sense. It's clear that that also is contrary to the Pan-Africanist thinking, because Pan-Africanism is not talking about raising different nations to stand on their own and then feed into a holistic picture. My brother, the plan that we need as African people right now is basically to revisit the plan already laid down by the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and see how we build from there. How do we make the industries that Garvey had even started begin to address the importance of who we are as African people? How do we run away from this mentality of believing that there are so-called leaders who should think for us, and then from there we just create a buy-in into the vision? It doesn't make sense for him to say with the presidents that he has identified, they should clarify the vision, they should structure the vision, they should qualify the vision, they should quantify the vision, they should give it a schedule, they should justify it, they should ratify the strategic map. That doesn't make any sense. Where are the people? And then the people just have to buy into this particular vision and give it life. But I don't know where that is coming from. And I hear what you're saying about him having many interviews and being known in the southern part of Africa. I must confess, the first time I heard about the Rapid Africa Plan was when you invited me to participate in the show. And then I had to start doing my research around it. And then got to know that, oh, wow, okay, there's something called the Rapid Africa Plan. So we have to, my brother, go back to the basics of Pan-Africanism. If we are looking at a rapid plan to take us forward as African people, the question that we should be asking ourselves is, how do we rapidly inject life into what Garvey started? The dilemma that we are caught up with is a scenario where everyone believes that their idea is the idea and everyone else must just follow through onto it. I'm not saying the brother hasn't given thought to his idea. It sounds like he has, but he, for me, comes across as someone who is saying, this is my plan and everyone must now just buy into my plan, and then we go ahead with it. And in reading the book, I might come up and say something different, but from what I have heard him say on the different videos that I have watched with him presenting, I am not convinced that he is coming with anything new. I am convinced that, yes, he is right on the sense of urgency. I'm fully with you on that. And I am not convinced either on him continually talking about China and saying with the West, yes, some of them will be our partners. Yes, we need partners. And from there, you just begin to wonder, when he talks about the neo-colonial agenda, does he really fully understand neo-colonialism? Does he really apply his mind in as far as aspects to do with reparations are concerned? Because listening to him, I have not heard anything substantially Pan-Africanist that is coming from him. I, on the contrary, believe that he is of this mind that as long as someone is said to have been involved in the fight against colonialism, therefore they are Pan-Africanist and therefore they are revolutionary. But not necessarily so, my brother. We can't readily accept these notions without interrogating them, without thinking through them. What will Thabo Mbeki coordinate? What does he know about Pan-Africanism in its application. I'm not saying he doesn't know it theoretically, but one thing I know for a fact is that he is not applying Pan-Africanism, and his response to the reality of the situation on the ground is clearly reflected by his term of presidency and the situation that he found African people in and left African people in does not speak to Pan-Africanism. Not at all, my brother. So we need to understand further when the brother talks about let's unite Africa industrially. Then after 5 years, we will talk about political. We'll talk about political unity after we have united industrially. How does that work? How do you even divorce the politics from the economics? Because for me, it sounds like just another politics that he's playing around with. You can't go to politicians and say you don't recognize politicians, you don't recognize politics, but you want the economy. It doesn't make sense. I would have thought as well, my brother, that the Africa Free Trade Agreement, it's been in the pipeline for so long. He seems to want to distance himself from that, but that free trade agreement speaks to the economics as much as it speaks to movement, it speaks to goods, it speaks to people, but it also speaks to what he says he's coming with, but he says his is the answer and not this one. Why could he not have tried to at least see how these can speak to each other? Regardless of how messed up the African Union is, of which we all know that it's not really representing our interests as ordinary African people, but the fact that this space is being made available, we should find ways of taking advantage of it and moving in it. And those are the avenues and parameters that will be necessary in order for us to move rapidly forward as African people. We cannot pretend that the African Union does not exist, because it does. That's a reality on the ground. So I think there is a lot of fine-tuning that is necessary, my brother. I think there is a lot that needs to be done. And in as far as Pan-Africanism and this particular plan, I don't see where they connect necessarily. There are some aspects where they kind of come close to each other, but it's definitely not a Pan-Africanist plan.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Brother Tinno has dropped out for a bit. Elder Pepukayi, was there anything you want to comment?
Well, not much to add to what Brother Sabelo have just said, because I've never heard of him. I don't know his background. I don't know how he has arrived at this plan. But the central thing that he has mentioned is a level of cultural disconnection that we have as a people. So before we can have any kind of plan, culture is central, because we've been moved out of our African framework of culture to put into this colonized position of mental enslavement, to the point where if you look at a state like Nigeria, the Nigerian state recognizes two religions, Christianity and Islam. Both of these religions is the vehicle of conquest, the vehicle of colonization, the vehicle of domination. And yet they recognize an African spiritual tradition is just tossed to one side and have no recognition. So until we begin to address, to know who we are, we cannot move one iota. So this thing about rapid development, yes, it must be rapid, but rapid to where? Rapid to where? Because the fundamental issue that we face now is the state of the African mind. How to begin to restore ourselves. Because at the moment, we're just a carbon copy of who we're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
We are more Christian than European. We're more Islamic than the Arabs. And we talk about China. Yes, China is a serious threat. But when we look at Britain alone as one country, the trillions that they rape Africa yearly is just unimaginable. So the question is, how do we deal with the political agenda for Africa? And you can't say, let us deal with the economics and we'll deal with the political later.
Okay. The only thing I would say to that, as been mentioned, is written a book, which must have gone in some depth, and what we saw was just a brief synopsis of him putting forward some ideas. So I don't want to come down and just condemn him out of hand until I actually read the book and to see what depth this plan go into. I mean, there's a good question here. It says, can you inform us how many countries are involved in the plan? Well, in terms of listening to that brief presentation from what he had done, he's mentioned certain leaders of certain countries as to be a catalyst, use them as catalysts to get this plan going. So as we know, he mentioned Rwanda, Tanzania, Ghana, Botswana, I think Zambia, and Azania. So in terms of how many countries, as the question asks, is involved in this plan, it seems like at the stage he was talking, it was exclusively targeted at certain leaders of certain countries because he saw them being the visionaries who can pick up this plan and then evolve this plan. So that's what I would say to that. I don't know if anybody else got any comments regarding that.
Pepukayi, I begin with a question. Is he identify these people, these presidents of these countries, as who he believe can take a lead? Has he spoken with them? Have they support this plan? So that's the first thing I would want to know. Having not read his book, having not heard about him before, having seen none of the interviews. My question would be, these people is mentioned, has he spoken to them? Have they agreed? How does he feel they should be the one moving this plan? That would be my first question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, Brother Taharkah, to answer the question that has been asked as to how many countries the plan is in. Because like I was saying to you, that for some of us, it's the first time to even hear about him or hear about the plan. And one would have thought that it's something that Pan-Africanists would at least have known about if it was Pan-Africanist oriented. I'm not saying that there are some Pan-Africanists who do not do not know as well. Maybe there are some who do know, and I accept and appreciate as well that it's impossible for him to have contacted literally everyone around the world. But I think within the Pan-Africanist circles, we kind of know each other. And you get information trickling in from this one and that one and that one. That's why we're able to connect across continents. And I would say that as well, definitely, it is important to know the nature of the buy-in of the names that he is putting across, and also the criteria that was used to identify these people or identify the countries that he wants the plan to start in. And on the issue of the book, Brother Taharkah, the book, like I was saying earlier, according to the Amazon website where it is listed has got 646 pages. How easily accessible is that for the ordinary African right now? We have to look at a scenario where if the plan is really to be taken seriously and for it to be implemented in the manner that it should be implemented, it must be accessible to every African so that they can see themselves within the plan. But when he explains it, even in other videos, he's got a team that is working for the next 12 months, and next thing that team is going to present the plan, and then we have to create a buy-in. And then it will be re-engineered as it goes along. So it basically means, again, it's the same governmental approach that we have been subjected to, where government comes with its own plan and comes to the people and says, this is what we have decided, what are your thoughts? But at that time, your thoughts don't mean anything anymore, because the whole thing has been structured in the manner that it has. Because the whole thing has basically been given the endorsement that the originators of this thing want it to be like. Because he says he's the architect of the economic revolution of Africa. At least if he had maybe said he's the architect of the plan, I would be good with that. But he says he's the architect of the revolution, and he's the architect of the execution. So where does everyone else come in?
Let's see what. Let's see. Okay. Okay, there's another point here. Africa needs a parallel government or governments that would be free of neocolonialism and white supremacy stooges. I think virtually all current African heads of states are working for whites or the neocolonialists. So that's the point there.
I think the brother has captured the substantive element of what we are dealing with. I'm not sure if I would go that far in as far as President Magufuli is concerned, but the rest of them, it's difficult to understand how it is that we can even call them our presidents, because they're not working for our interests. The African Union has become like any other union. It's almost like a trade union, really, that looks after the interests of its own members. That is why it's called the Union of Heads of States and Presidents. It's not a union of African people. What we need is basically African people themselves to begin to structure an agenda that speaks to the reality of the advancement of who we are as African people within the context of our own African realities, within the context of our own cultural manifestation of who we are and our cultural practices as African people. For as long as we try to find our identity within the Africanness that has been defined for us externally, then we will never ever get to understand the direction in which we are supposed to go in. We will forever be grappling in the dark and coming up with one plan after another and coming up with this top-down sort of mechanism. I decide and everyone must run with my plan, as against taking the African position which works on consensus. African decision-making is very much informed by consensus.
All right. Yeah, the question here, was it Pro-U Services Limited? Yeah, I did say at the beginning that this video is quite old. So obviously, the whole concept has been around for quite some time, because Mbeki, the president of Zambia at the time, was mentioned. So you can see they're no longer in power. So it's obvious that this plan has been around some time, and it's been doing the rounds, but it's been doing the rounds only in a very selective circle, it seems. That's why it hasn't got out to the masses. That's why so many people now are so so surprised that such a plan has been around for so long and they have not come across it. The only reason I came across
Sorry,
it...
Brother Taharkah, before you continue on that, when you say so long, what do you mean? Because from my understanding, with the videos I was watching, he launched it last year.
Well, the brothers... Okay, well, the brother's question was, how comes he mentioned Mbeki, who's been out of power for almost 10 years? So
yeah, I think that's a valid question, because Mbeki is no longer president of anything. So why should he be pushing division?
You mentioned that's been long out of power since 2011, and in 2014, and he also mentioned him. So that's what I found that a bit confusing. That's why I said this presentation, it was made that some Africa Day celebration. I couldn't track down which one, but obviously that was made some time ago. So that's why I'm saying it seems like this plan has been around for quite some time. I know in the last 6 months, I came across it in about August of last year.
Yeah, that's when he launched it.
There's a sister who runs a channel called, I can't remember, but her name is Susan Tata. Dr. Susan Tata.
Yeah, the Pan African TV or some Pan African TV or something like that. Yeah,
and that's when I first came across it, and that was about August. And then since then, I've come across several things on it, mostly videos. I've looked for any PDF or texts which I cannot find. Apart from, apart from it says he has the book, which I haven't got hold of yet. But that comes, I mean, that's why I said it seems to have been around in a very selective circle so far, doing its rounds there, and it's slowly now leaking out. But I think that's why those particular names there would have been mentioned. So this one. Okay, yeah, the phase one, it talked about entrepreneurs. Africa is a continent of entrepreneurs, so that phase one is not even needed, which is which is a good point, because the definition of entrepreneur is somebody who gets up and makes things happen, and that's what the majority of Africans are doing. Every day they get up and they go out and they make things happen, so they're natural entrepreneurs anyway. But you can see, being a professor, I'm not sure what institution he's attached to, but you can see he's thinking on a certain level. So the woman that goes to the market and have her thing, probably he just overlook her as, you know, when those are the true entrepreneurs, probably they get overlooked, you know, unless you're talking in the millions or the billions, you're not. And you can say that's part of the flaw. That's where, to me, the plant is very flawed. He's talking to very much an elite and totally dismissing the masses, like as if the masses are there to be led. So once we can tweak it at the top and get the elites in place, they will just present this plan to the masses, who will then just follow on, rather than them having any kind of input. So you can say that's a great weakness of what I see of this plan so far. I'm just going through. Okay, but which is a point, yeah. All African leaders must stand up and fight the Europeans and the Chinese, right? On all fronts.
That's correct. In actual fact, Brother Taharkah, the point that this brother is making needs to be viewed also from the perspective of delinking. We need, especially now with this African continental trade agreement, whereby our African leaders, part of the fight with the West is protecting the mineral wealth of Africa. Let's make sure that we basically trade amongst each other. Let's take advantage of our own legislation that is enabling us now as African people to trade. The reason why Brexit basically comes to at the same time as the African agreement is because the British have basically seen that they can exploit us more effectively on their own than going through Europe. So they have seen a greater opportunity in as far as this particular route is concerned. But if our leaders can stand together, and basically it's even crazy to call them leaders because for most of them, if not all, they're just misleaders. If they can basically stand together and push a position that basically says that our wealth is our wealth and it will benefit the African entrepreneurs that the brother is talking about. At phase one, if it's about building entrepreneurship, it's not necessary. The entrepreneurs are all over the place. It's just a question of elevating their entrepreneurial skills and their ability to benefit from their skills without being exploited by those who are perceived as being above them in whatever way or form.
Okay. In terms of, you touched on something which I want to actually do a meeting about, which is obviously the African trade agreement, which is just coming to being on the 1st of this year. And that's something I want to spend some time on. But it's ironic that this Africa plan is being pushed while that is also being pushed. And you think there would have been a link between them and they're being promoted separately, which is very confusing. You know, why is like two separate things being promoted, which is, you know, it makes you think. I mean, there is another 5-minute video that I also want to play, and that brings into play some of the things that Brother Sabelo just mentioned in terms of how Africa sees itself, how the world sees Africa, and in terms of what was missing from what he says in the plan, which could very well be in the book, but from his brief synopsis, is that how does the world see Africa? How does Africa see itself? And why is it crucial for Africa to begin to look inwards on itself and look to each other in terms of especially what's happening with the free trade agreement, that they should be taking massive advantage of that. So I'll just cue that up.
Bauxite reserves in the world.
Yes, we have volume.
All right, it's coming through. All right, let me take it from the beginning.
Woods, uranium, crude oil, and others. Yet, the continent,
I'll take it from the beginning.
30.5 million square kilometers, and a youthful population of 1.3 billion inhabitants. China is 9.6 million square kilometers and 1.4 billion inhabitants. India has a total space of 3.3 million square kilometers and 1.4 billion inhabitants. Now, yet, Africa is projected as overpopulated, and pressure mounts on Africans and their leaders to depopulate. Why? Why? Now, please note, Africa is home to 60% of the world's arable land, 90% of raw material reserve, 40% of gold reserve, 33% of diamond reserve, 95% of platinum reserve, and holds the largest bauxite reserves in the world. Of course, in addition to manganese, woods, uranium, crude oil, and others. Yet, the continent is touted as the poverty capital of the world and ripe for depopulation. The question is, why? Well, President Jacques Chirac of France provides an illuminating insight. He said, "We bled Africa for 4.5 centuries. We looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that the Africans are good for nothing. In the name of religion, we destroyed their culture. And after being made rich at their expense, we now steal their brains through miseducation and propaganda to prevent them from enacting black retribution against us, unquote. Well, put simply, for over 4 centuries, Africa is not in control of its resources. Look, a 2016 study of Africa by the NGO called War on Want reveals that 101 companies, mostly British, control $305 billion worth of platinum, $276 billion worth of oil, and $216 billion worth of coal at 2016 market prices. Yes, they own mines or mineral licenses in 37 African countries and control vast swaths of Africa's land, 4 times the size of the United Kingdom. Now look, Africa subsidizes the rest of the world by $32 billion annually. A 2017 report by Global Justice Now and other groups estimates that $161.6 billion enter into Africa, while $202.9 billion leave Africa almost every year. For example, in 2017, Africa received a total of $19.7 billion in aid. They paid back $18 billion in debt repayments. Debt burden is killing Africa. African governments have borrowed between 25 and 75% of their GDP, but with little or nothing to show for it. Africans in the diasporas remit not less than $32 billion annually, but multinational companies siphon $32.4 billion in profits and illicit financial outflows. Look, an estimated $29 billion are stolen via illegal logging, fishing, and poaching annually. How can any continent, country, or people accumulate and sustain wealth, growth, and prosperity with such statistics? That's a great question. Well, look, hopefully, now you know your Africa better. Edmund Mbiaka once wrote, "Peace of mind always comes with knowing who you truly are, where you currently stand, where you positively need to be, and strongly believing in its possibility." Africa needs to control its resources, no doubt. For productive, patriotic, and effective leadership, we need our best and ablest citizens with fortified character in local, state, and federal governments. This must be given utmost consideration in upcoming elections across Africa. Let me say it once more. Our problem is not the age of our leaders, but unfortified character. It is your responsibility to protect and defend your Africa. The starting point is to educate and transform the mindset of our leaders and peoples. Look, the least you can do is to assist with ensuring that this message reaches every African.
Okay, that was just give a little background in terms of the situation in, because we're talking about the Rapid Africa Plan, and then that video is putting into context the state of Africa in terms of what the neo-colonials are doing, what the Chinese are doing, and so forth. So that's part of the thing that, as I'm saying, the plan is out there, the skeletons of it, the brother talked about. But one of the things that, again, he might have gone through this book, he seemed to have glossed over to somewhat how entrenched a lot of these European powers are into Africa, and what it is going to take to prize them out. Because you mentioned the United Kingdom, how entrenched they are in Africa in terms of what they own. I mean, imagine owning land the size, 3 times the size of your own territory. That's, that's unbelievable. And And we need to look to find out where in Africa does Britain own this mass land, masses of land, and you can bet all the resources that's found on that land is automatically ceded to the UK. So we can see that a lot of things are very, very, very entrenched. So any Rapid Africa plan, that has to be kind of calculated into it. Because, and just before opening it up, just to say the actual, the whole Africa open trade, that's just started. I was watching one of the channels, I think it was Al Jazeera, and they was interviewing a panelist. And the first thing the host started off by saying was that it is going to be difficult, or how is Europe, I think he mentioned China, India, is going to be priced out of Africa, because when it comes to the economies and the trade, they dominate. So he was basically saying it's going to take a lot to get them to give up what they're used to. So that's the kind of fight that we're on. So let me get back to some of these questions. In the meanwhile, you're free to comment on what you saw there.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on what you've just said there. What I find interesting is that Brother Mbaiwa is of the view that the 12-month period between October 2020 and October 2021 will be unhindered in as far as the execution of the first part of the plan is concerned, which for me, especially having raised what you've just raised now, doesn't make any sense. Where will the Chinese be? Where will the Indians be? Where will the Europeans be whilst this is unhindered? Unhindered by who? And where will these governments, who are basically proxies to the European powers, be? Like, look at the situation in Amazonia, for instance. The French Republic of Cameroon is basically sitting on the Amazonians on behalf of the French government. So where will they be when all this is happening freely and unhindered, as the brother says? If he had taken time to find a way of aligning his plan with the Africa Continental Trade Agreement, he would have gotten somewhere. What we are needing right now, my brother, is not so much a rapid plan. We need a seriously radical Pan-Africanist transformation plan. We just need to overturn. We can't wait for 50 years before we start arising and therefore coming out as we are number one in as far as our resources are concerned. If we can be radical and Pan-Africanist in our approach, and we're in talking a Pan-Africanist approach, we're talking basically a Pan-Africanist economy. If we can come together and establish that Pan-Africanist economy, we don't have to wait all these years.
Yeah, while you're speaking, there's a question addressed to you. It's asking what are the outlines of the Marcus Garvey plan that you talked about earlier.
Okay, my brother, the Garvey plan is very deep in many different ways. It would take a full session for us to be able to properly articulate it and break it down. But the bottom line of the Garvey plan is that the empowerment of the people is basically informed by a revisitation of the culture. It's informed by the African people themselves actually being entrepreneurs, like the point you raised earlier about entrepreneurship and about African people being able to trade one with the other. It's about the consolidation of an African economy. And in talking about an African economy, we're not talking about Africa from the perspective of the continent only. We are talking about the scenario where the trillions of dollars that are being spent by our brothers and sisters in the United States can actually be the part of the foundation of the African economy, whereby they invest in Africa, they invest in that which will take us forward as African people, where the fundamentals of the Gavi plan is race first, is that in everything that we do, we are informed by the understanding that in that which I am doing, whatever it is I'm doing, however which way I'm doing it, wherever I am doing it, the most important thing is, how does this add value to the advancement of the global African nation? If we cannot answer that question as to how we are adding value, then we need to revisit the plan and see how it advances us. And in advancing us, it talks to how we advance the interest of the ordinary African people, those who are marginalized, those who end up failing to get access to the academic books that purportedly speak to the advancement of African people, but they cannot be part of because they cannot access those books, or they cannot access the language in which the books are written. So we need to ensure that we move in that particular direction, where we go back to the Gavi plan and see how we can basically align the Gavi plan to the reality that we are basically living in right now.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, like you mentioned, the Garvey plan is something that's very, very extensive. And, you know, I mean, one of these days we will do a session on that, I do think. Because you see, a lot of people think, well, Garvey's been dead since 1940, so how could he have put forward a plan back in the 1920s that is relevant for us today? You know, but when you do look at the plan, when you come across what Marcus Garvey was saying in terms, he's bang on. And it's very, very relevant in today's world because, as Sabelo said, it's based around race first. So that says it all. Whatever you do in the interest of your people first. And we can see the situation that exists. We're looking at situations all over the continent where it is race last, not race first. It is very much race last. It's everybody else above their own people. So
the only time they want to put us first now is with the vaccine.
Well, that's it. That's something. But like I'm saying, God it's very, very extensive. And it's something that, you know, you can only build on. You can only take it. The foundation is there. The foundation has been laid, and you can only build on it. There's no need to rip it up and start again. Well, to his credit, the brother did mention Garvey. So he must have, in devising this plan, looked at Garvey quite extensively, because he did mention at one point, I think he said he looked at something like he went through 400 books during the 7 years it took him to put this plan together. So, you know, Elder Pepukayi, is there anything you want to come in?
Well, yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that you have these many books to look at. But did you look at Sheikh Anta Diop book, Black Africa? Because nobody mentioned the plan outlined by Sheikh Anta Diop, which is yet to be realized. Now, he mentioned this brother and his plan and how it coincides with the free trade area that the African government through the AU is putting together. Now, we know whatever we say about the African government, as government through the AU, which is a vehicle for that level of development, they're bringing this free trade area. Now, this brother, who is he working with? How did he arrive at this plan? What is his background? Is he some professor who's been in some university over a period of time?
Yes, he's a professor. He's a professor. He's an academic.
And the key thing, how is he linked to the ordinary African underground? You know, yes.
But the key thing is not. You can see from what he said, he's not.
Right.
He's very much an academic who would go do his research, put together some theoretical thing, and then he's targeted certain leaders that he thinks probably would be receptive to this plan, and going to use them basically as the, you know, the lightning rod to say, look at this plan, see what you think of it. Then if there's favorable, you know, feedback, then maybe we can start to roll it out. And that's only, it's just me, you know, thinking outside the box, me being kind to him in a way. But I'm here, like I'm saying, it's wrote a book anyway. So to be fair, it's I will endeavor to get the book, to look at it, and just to see what, you know, is involved, because I've looked at certain interviews like Sabelo has. There's quite a few little interviews of him and various channel, little snippets talking about it and relating to people who is passed it by, and but it's very much in that stage, just a discussion stage.
So, Brother Taharkah, what we should be looking at is how we could bring him on the channel.
Well,
So
that's
instead of we asking ourselves questions that we can't answer, bring him and let him answer the questions.
I fully support the Elder Pepukayi. I fully agree with you. It will make it so much easier for us to have this conversation with him, because it should not seem as though we are bashing him because he is not around, because it's not so much bashing, it's asking questions. You see, like, for instance, the point raised by, I think there's a point, a comment that you put on by Smooth Rebel, saying something like, we need to get rid of the colonizers from Africa and everything. That is something that is absolutely important. And he seems to skim over it. His gripe is more with the Chinese than the colonizers. He says, no, these ones, we will choose the ones who will partner with us. We are at liberty to choose our partners. China must not speak to us about who we should be fighting with. But that's not the issue. The issue is that any foreign domination is foreign domination, and we do not want it. That's the bottom line. We are African, bottom line. This is Africa, bottom line. Africa for Africans, bottom line. And that is where we need to be moving.
Yeah, but how can we, as Africans, talk about partnership with criminals and thieves, rapists and plunderers?
Absolutely.
It's all resource.
Yeah. That is true, Elder Pepukayi, definitely.
But let's see, I think in the China situation, I think what's happening, and it's a shame because I know Elder Cecil has mentioned this quite a few times, that we should not be blindsided, that because the Chinese are very much visible at the moment, they're the one putting all the infrastructure up, they're the visible one. People forget. People are of the mind, well, the British pulled out and gave you your independence. The French pulled out and gave you independence. So now you have a free hand. People are very much of the thought. They don't, I mean, that's why I played the second little video clip to show how entrenched they are. That although they're not there in person on the ground, the structure they left behind are structures that's serving them even more efficiently than when they were on the ground.
Of
And
course.
people tend to overlook that. When people look at Africa now, who do they see? They see the Chinese. So they say, oh, it's the Chinese is the problem. The Chinese is a problem. But truth be told, the kind of assets the Chinese have in Africa pales insignificant when we look at the British, the French, the Portuguese stuff. They are the one who basically have Africa like that. The Chinese are just skimming the surface at the moment. Yes, they would like to dig deeper, but at the moment, they're very much just skimming the surface. And I think that's the big mistake we make all the time. And it seems like he himself has fallen into that trap by glossing over what the Europeans have done or what they're doing, and went straight for the jugular of the Chinese and say they are the problem.
Yeah. Well, the brother is not here to speak for himself, but I hope, and it's a big hope, that he's not in some way tied up with them, and then focus on to look, the Chinese, these are partners, but the Chinese are the dodgy ones. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's so true. That's so true.
But I tell you something that we overlook, and we must not overlook it for 1 second, and it's the Arab presence in Africa. Because to be in Africa, to be born in Africa, does not qualify you as an African if you not have African blood. So it's not just the location, the physical location of being in Africa. Are you an African in Africa? Because almost a third of our continent is under the control of the Arabs, and they're not African. Don't care how long they've been there, the Arabs.
Yeah, no, I think that's one equation that a lot of our African people are not ready to deal with, more particularly when you talk about the fact that the northern part of Africa, as we speak, has been under a longer period of colonization and a more insidious form of colonization than the rest of the continent. And people don't want to talk about the Arab enslavement of our people. They don't want to talk about the Arab colonization of our people, and yet that is such a reality. And that is why I find, like, even the same question that you've put, Brother Taharkah, about future leaders continuing to exploit Africa. Are there any positives to be seen in future leaders? Look, I don't see any positives in future leaders in Europe and the UK, because they will continue to want to exploit us. But the positives I see in African future leaders is when African future leaders decide to work for the benefit of the masses, not for the benefit of those neocolonializers who are still continuing to basically hold Africa by the throat and suffocate us day in, day out, and exploit us in a manner that is designed to ensure that they perpetuate their good living at our expense.
Okay.
Yeah. And definitely, Smooth Rebel, you're an African, bottom line.
Yep.
If your ancestry is African, you're African. Wherever you are, you're an African. That's your ancestry is African. Like what Brother Pepukayi is saying, the elder is basically clarifying the fact that as much as our African people, wherever they are African. These people who came to Africa from wherever they come from are still whatever they are from wherever they came from.
That's it.
The
How long there was in Africa, that's the other thing we have to look at. No matter how long there was in Africa, they made sure. I mean, take for instance, in when apartheid was on, when we had the colonization of Africa for many years, the same thing happened in the Caribbean. Those people knew that even when their children was ready to do their schooling, they would ship them back to Europe.
Yeah.
To get that, you know, their history and their culture and everything, to get that sense of where they come from. Then when they graduate, then they can come back to wherever they was living before. You can see they never lost that sense of who they are. And down to the very Arabs, they've been there now over what? From the 7th century, over 1,000 years. And then,
yeah, 7th century.
But you watch them closely, and wherever their center is, they look back to Arabia. You know, everything's go back there. All their mindset go back there. Everything go back there because they know where they come from. They know who they are.
My brother, even when you look at the fact that they belong to the Arab League as much as they belong to the African Union. So how does that work? What sense does that make? And this is why Gaddafi basically could say in 2000 that the Arabs must come to Africa because that's the only space that is left for them. Because they were part of the League as much as they were part of Africa. So we need to be cognizant of these realities. It's not even a scenario where we are saying that is what is happening by implication. It's what they are actually saying themselves and doing themselves. So that is an aspect that needs to be looked into properly. And the tendency for some people now is basically to want to brush that aside and pretend it's just not there. Whereas it is a reality that is confronting Africa right now.
Yes. So that's another, again, I don't know, I haven't read this book, so I don't know if the brothers touched upon that. Because in any Africa plan, we're going to come upon that contradiction of the Arabs wanting to hold on to the land in Africa, but culturally, linguistically, everything else, they're in Arabia. And when we talk about because I've listened to other shows, and when the thing about the diaspora relocating, it's something that's sending alarm bells ringing in those North African countries for the coming together of Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. Because one thing, as you say, in Africa, it's something that does not want to be faced up to. It's like they brush it it's brushed under the carpet. Oh, the Northern Africa is there, but one thing they find in the diaspora is something that's at the forefront of our minds. So when people start relocating, that's something that's going to come up all the time. They're questioning why such, why is this, why is that, you know, and the whole status quo now is being challenged. So that's something that you can say, sitting there and hoping would not happen. You know, and they're going to try and put spanners in the work of coming together of Africans from Africa and inside Africa going. So that's what I'm saying. The Rapid Africa plan, the way the brothers presenting it, presupposes that, I don't know, like many people, they have just cut off Africa, cut off the top of Africa and say, that's no, we've lost that. I don't know. Some people have that mindset.
Yes.
You know, so the term Africa, south of the Sahara or sub-Saharan Africa now become relevant. Because one thing I do notice with a lot of the academics, that they do very much love this term, sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes, they do.
And that shows me in their mind, they have written off that northern portion of Africa that we have lost it.
Well, interestingly, some Pan-Africanists have also come to that conclusion, where some Pan-Africanists will clearly say to you, let's just focus on the south of the Sahara. There is nothing we can do about the north. That's the sad reality of where we are right now.
Yeah, so, okay, let me bring in Marnie. So, yes, so, as I said, the topic today, Pan-Africanism and the Rapid Africa Plan, because one of the things that I was conscious of when I first looked at this topic was that where does Pan-Africanism, because I never heard the brother mentioning Pan-Africanism at all within his plan. So where would Pan-Africanism fits in? And so far from what he has said, in the brief clips I've seen him and the interviews I've seen him in, I would say Pan-Africanism, as Pan-Africanists would view Pan-Africanism, does not fit in neatly into that plan at all at the moment. I'm not saying it couldn't change, but at the moment, that's how it comes across to me. So we can see, as Brother Sabelo mentioned, Garvey laid the foundation. And, again, people are going to say, well, he done that in the 1920s. So how is it relevant for us today? But it's only looking at the plan, looking at the situation that exists now. And when they refer to the plan that Garvey put down, and said, but it is still relevant. It just need building upon. But the foundation, what he laid, was absolutely spot on. Absolutely.
In actual fact, Brother Taharkah, even when you look at Chancellor Williams, the destruction of the black civilization, he's also got a plan there. And then you look at the black agenda, there is also a plan there.
Yes.
What we should be basically looking at is taking these plans and seeing to what extent we can get these plans to be relevant to where we are right now and go forward, as against creating something new and saying, this is my plan and I am running with this plan and everyone must now come onto my plan. Because there are already things, and Garvey's one, had it not been sabotaged by the system and using people within the movement to collapse it, we would be far by now.
Yeah.
We would be far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're coming to an end, others in the last comments, Elder Pepukayi?
Well, it's clear that we need a plan. We need it urgently, but it's not just any plan from anybody. We have to look at what we have, examine it, and see how we can tweak it, upgrade it to meet our present condition. But let me say this, and let us make no mistake. If we don't deal with this pandemic by resisting it and stopping it and shutting it down, there'll be none of us around for any kind of plan. Because this thing about what Chirac says about the assault, the genocide, the depopulation, let us not take this thing in a small way.
Yeah.
Because have we asked a question, how is it that the population of Tanzania and South Africa is almost the same, 50-odd million people? And in Tanzania, with this COVID, a tiny part of the population was coming into contact with it, and a much smaller who have died from it. But in South Africa, and Brother can speak to this, what is the death rate of Africans in South Africa from this COVID? Because we hear about a new strain in England, we also hear about a new strain in South Africa. Now, the question is, do we not remember of the genocide plan with AIDS and all the other biological weapon that's been manufactured, assault on our people from South Africa? Because the white people there have no intention of leaving that beautiful land. And they're not going to live peacefully with us. And foolish as we behaving, we not accept their dominance. And therefore, white people are not the sort of people who sit around and wait and watch they take action. So we must carefully try to understand scientifically, politically, medically, in every form or fashion, what is happening in South Africa with this vast death. Because what's the ratio of whites dying from COVID in South Africa? And what is the ratio of African dying from COVID in South Africa? Because whenever the news focus on it, it's only black people I see dying. I'm not in South Africa, so Brother Sabelo can speak of it. But what I'm saying, we can't ramp with this pandemic. We have to take it very, very serious, and we have to resist it in every way possible. Because if we leave it to its full conclusion, this pandemic pose a serious threat. Because let us say that the vaccine that is being distributed, and we know some people have had adverse effect from it. What if that's just a trial run? Because don't forget, this vaccine is not tested. It's experimental.
Yeah.
What if it's part of the plan to just roll it out, create some havoc here and there, but the one going to Africa is a real killer, because we're not making any vaccine, and the people making it are not our friends.
Yeah.
That is true.
No, that is very true, and your observations are correct, Elder Pepukayi. That's exactly what is happening, and that is the scenario that we are caught with right now. There is a lot of people who are supposedly dying from these things. The thing is, without autopsies being done, we don't even know what's killing our people anymore. But we're just seeing our people dying. And you see the point that you are raising as well. AstraZeneca, which is the vaccine which they started trying sometime last year, had adverse side effects to a point of killing some people. And now we are being told that we are getting a vaccine from India, from the Serum Institute of India. But when you trace it, you find that it's the same AstraZeneca, but now it's coming from India. It's no longer coming directly from Oxford in the UK. So for those who have not done their research, they'll believe, at least it's from India, then it must be fine. But not realizing that it's the same thing that was deemed. The trials actually had to stop at some point with AstraZeneca because they realized how lethal it was. But then India will be sending AstraZeneca to us.
Can I say this in closing? Yes, we want a rapid plan, but the rapid plan is to stay on this planet. That's the first plan. That's the first plan. How we stay on this planet. Once we survive that, all things are possible. But if we allow our enemies to come and poke substance in us that we don't know anything about, that we don't have anything, all we'll be doing is paying for our own debt. I'm not for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that is true. So, so as we're drawing to an end, I'd just like to say one of the names that was mentioned earlier was President Magufuli, and I think we should all be 100% behind what he's doing, because he's the only one that stood firm and say, one, they will not be giving vaccine to his people, and two, he refused to lock down. He said, if these things about, yes, we can learn to live with it, and Tanzania has been able to carry on as normal, whereas other countries in Africa are just, taking the orders and locking down, even though when we look at many of those countries, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this R rate, this magical R rate, which they're saying once it hits 1 or above, it's an emergency. In some Africa, the R rate is so low. It's so low. So going by their own logic and their own science, it says when it is so low, there's no need for no vaccination or nothing. And yet they are foisting vaccination upon African governments to say you must vaccinate your population, even though the rates of this corona is so low. Much more people are dying of malaria. Much more people are dying of the usual diseases than, and even car accidents are killing a lot more people. And yet there's this push to vaccinate everybody. And that's why what the stand that President Magufuli has taken is a noble stand, and we should all be supporting him. And I only hope and pray and keep my fingers crossed that some of the other African leaders will wake up. Something will hit them that wake them up, and they'll look at Tanzania and say, but hold on, what's going on there? Why so many people coming down with this COVID and everything, and adopt the policy that Tanzania has adopted?
No, we speak of the leadership of Magufuli in Tanzania, but let us cast our mind back just a little bit. Next door to Tanzania was Burundi, and the president who they assassinated recently of Burundi was not going along with the program. He had a big gathering, a massive stadium, thousands of people. And his daughter did something fantastic. And he went and embraced his daughter. And the signal he was sending, no distancing, embrace. Because the virus that is killing us is Europe. That is the virus that is killing us. Not some monkey bat, whatever. Europe is the virus. That is what's killing us. And that president is dead. And the one that succeeded him is begging for vaccine. What does that tell us? So the point I'm making, can we protect our president in Tanzania? Can we keep him alive? Because don't forget, in time of chattel slavery, in time of when Judge Apapobo wanted to sell his palm oil himself, what happened? They've been either killed or exiled. That's what European deal with strong leaders. You either exile them and you kill them. How do we protect the brave ones? And we can't hope and pray. How do we protect? Because the reason why a lot of African leaders have not done the right thing, they're afraid of being murdered. Because we tend to forget the economic hitman. That's not a joke. The economic hitman is the arm that white people create. If you don't toe the line, half of the head. That's how serious it is. Because Africa is their power. And they're not going to give that up. Because me and you are saying they should.
All right. Okay, time has beaten us completely again. And I'd like to thank Brother Sabelo for coming on today with some very, very insight.
Salute.
Thank you, Elder. Thank you very much. And Brother Taharkah, please do the best you can to follow through on Elder Pepukayi's suggestion to have the brother come on to the show. Then we can have this conversation with him. That would be really good,
I'll definitely be doing that. Yeah. And again, I thank Brother Tinno, although unfortunately he dropped out, he lost his line. But again, I thank him for coming on today. And of course, Elder Pepukayi. As usual, thank you for coming on and for the insight and wisdom of your words. And, of course, we'll be back again next week with another very, very interesting topic. So I thank everybody for tuning in each week, because this means a lot to us as the Pan African Congress movement, being an organization that's been around for so many years. We can only keep going by the support we are getting from the grassroots, from our people. And now platforms like this give us the ability to reach out right across the Pan-African world. So again, we take advantage of platforms like this, even though we know they're not owned by us. So we know we are limited in what we can say, we are limited in what we can do, because we know if we push the barrier or we push the limits too much, we know they will pull us down. So we stay within the guidelines as much as possible, just to be able to reach our people. So again, until next week, I thank everybody for watching. So now I'll pass you over to Ndugu Amani, who will be closing the changing the vibrations for us.
Thank you, Brother Taharkah. Thank you, Elder Pepukayi.
Thank you too, my brother.
Yeah.
Yes, Asante Sana to everybody who contributed today. And now we will end as we began the ritual, Mabadili Kayana Shati, in order for us to take forward our intentions and for us to add our spirit to our political endeavors and to the liberation and the protection of our race and our people and our lands worldwide. So, at the heart of that and at the base of that is our spirituality and culture. That's where we will draw our strength from. That's where we draw our inspiration from, and that's where we overcome our enemies. Anything where we have succeeded, our spirituality has been at our heart and our base and foundation. Our culture is a spiritual. It's a spiritual liberty. That's our culture. That's the people, no matter what we call it. So let me just share the screen and do the Taharkah. Okay. Yes. So as before, we're going to use the vibration that symbolizes the one vibration that is of all things under all creation, in all dimensions, in all existence, that we are an aspect of. That same vibration that manifests itself in all different ways, we are part of that vibration. So this vibration, I'm now going to ring through the triangle chime, is representing that, and that's again for us to give of ourselves to that, and we allow that vibration to go around us, through us, and over us. At the same time, we're thinking of giving thanks now as we're closing the ritual. We're giving thanks to the all. Thanks to the ancestors that we called into this, into our consciousness, into our realm, and into the netters, the natural forces, or the orishas, or whatever we want to call them, have come into our conscious understanding, a conscious being around us and with us. And then we're asking that these living powers take our intentions, take our objectives, and help us to manifest them. But we do not do that. They do not do that by themselves. It has to come from our will. It has to come from our intention. And for us coming together wherever we are in the world, and discussing these things and having a clear idea of where we want to go. We may not even know how we're going to do it, but we know what we're going to do, and we know what we want to achieve. That is a spiritual act, and they will assist us with that. We must hold that clearly and understand that our intentions create all, and we cannot be destroyed. We are the creator. We cannot be wiped out. We can be hindered, we can be stopped, but that is down to us to be focusing on how we stop that. But we are of all things, and so we must call on that power. You're either the creator or you're not. If you think something else has the power over you, then you give that thing the power. That is your creator. That is your God. Understand who you truly are. So we're going to ring the chime 5 times. 5 for activity, for change, flexibility, for intent. Let the vibration go around you, over you, and through you. At the same time, we're giving that thanks and appreciation to the powers we called into our presence as we close in fellowship and love with each other. I'll begin and I'll count in Kiswahili. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Nne. Tano. So now, with intention and power, we say the words of affirmation and manifestation on the screen. Again, as I said before, if you don't mean it or you don't understand, sometimes it's better not to say it because your higher self will hold you to it. But if you do, and you wish to, please do. African spirituality isn't about coercion, about love and understanding and coming into your true self. So, in the words of Kiswahili and Kemet, if you just follow me. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Anuk amen.
Anuk amen.
All power to our people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end. I am. Amen. Meditate upon that, my dear family. Asanteni sana jamaa.
Asante sana.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody. And thanks for watching. So we'll be back again next week. So until then, I bid you kwaheri.
Yeah.